Welcome to a very bloody edition of the Boba Joe show. I'm going to do 100-man committee.
Get your Frank Dukes up.
Get your Dukes up. I'm going to be like Akira and Virtua Fighter, fight 100 men non-stop.
Hello, everybody. Hope everybody's keeping well out there in TV land, internet land, wherever you hail from.
It's a magical land.
We're going to talk about Rob Van Dam's most famous cousin today.
Yes. It's a lot of bloody movies over the years. I mean, you can kind of reel them off. There's There Will Be Blood, Blood Rain, First Blood. But that's not what we're talking about today. Of course, we're talking about the 80s classic Blood Fight. Is it? No, that's not quite right. That was the following year with one of the same actors. We're actually talking about Bloodsport, which came the year before.
Bloodsport. And it is a somewhat bloody affair.
There's enough blood going on, though.
There must be some blading going on off camera, because when these guys turn around, they're sporting the crimson mass.
It's funny. I haven't rewatched the film in quite a number of years, and I've seen it a few times, but not more than 10 years ago. I rewatched it again today, and I always remember it as being more violent than it was. And it's actually, there's a few moments where it is kind of like a little bit gruesome or a little bit visceral, but overall, it's not a terribly violent film considering how much fighting there is.
Yeah, there's a lot of implied violence in the movie.
It's fairly PG. Like, it'd be PG-13 at best, I would think.
They make use of kind of sound effects and using your imagination,
heightened tension and camera angles and facial expressions, like
like we hear the neck breaking, but we didn't really see the neck break, but we kind of know what's going on.
Like the tone of the film really feels like kind of a mix of American Ninja and the Karate Kid. It's kind of a mix of those styles of film. We've got like the martial arts master and the student who wants to fulfill his dying wish and all this, and we've got like kind of a bit of a villain, and but then they've also got a bit of kind of nonsense in the background about ninjutsu and other things, and it may not be able to be verified as factual.
Yeah, we'll get there, folks. Don't worry, we'll be debunking some of Mr. Duke's some of the mania behind the man. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting kind of combination of stuff all rolled into one, because there's a lot of kind of light, just of the time kind of 80s comedic humor in it. He's got his big burly sidekick who's good for some good slapstick, and of course we've got our Forrest Whitaker and the other kind of CIA guy who are trying to track Frank through Hong Kong, and they're bunglers, they're constantly tripping up and getting fooled, and it's almost reminds you of like Beverly Hills Cop or something, the way he's like kind of slipping away from them, kind of avoiding being caught. But yeah, lots of kind of humorous and kind of just funny moments that it definitely helps, because there is a pretty quick pace to the film. Like, you don't feel like it drags on, and no. I think those kind of moments of like kind of levity or brevity, whatever, they just they help it kind of truck along at a nice pace.
I feel like there's a good few different elements both in this film and that contribute to other things. I mean, the most obvious thing is that Jean-Claude had a decent career through the 80s and 90s in a lot of films, still in films in recent years, but most pretty much garbage, and have been post year 2000. Most of them used to be the old direct-to-DVD rental market stuff, but the stuff before the year 2000, you had like bloody Hard Target and Nowhere to Run and Kickboxer and Bloodsport, and like the decent ones you actually want to watch. And Bloodsport and Kickboxer are the two that even people who aren't like big action movie fans, or a lot of people are just fans of these films, like saw them as kids, love them. It's another immigrant. The story's not an immigrant story, but Jean-Claude's obviously a migrant, like old Stallone and Schwarzenegger, of course. So there's a lot of people who are migrants who really like, Stallone and like, bloody Commandos, Rambos, Kickbox. They really like these films, as well as just being cool, like 80s action films and martial arts. And it's probably one of my first most memorable films I saw as a kid on TV that was really a martial arts focused film, because I didn't really get into Bruce Lee stuff until probably the late 90s, where I was really actually watching his films, because they weren't typically shown on TV when I was a kid. So I got into post-year 2000, I got to Jet Li, Jackie Chan, and Donnie Yen, and then classic 70s Hong Kong kung fu films, as well as fantasy wushu films and all that. Whereas this one is a very, it's kind of a unique production. It's an American-made film, but filmed on location in China. For the era it's in, it's pretty decent martial arts and pretty good fight choreography. Of course, if you compare it to like films now or films from 70s, like Hong Kong films, like, proper martial art ones, you could say it's a bit rubbish if you're really trying to pick it. But we could say the same thing about Rocky and Rocky 2. They're not really good boxing, but you're watching it for the story, whereas here we're kind of watching the fighting. And I would put it in some of the better quality stuff of the 80s, especially for American cinema. American cinema didn't really start doing what Hong Kong guys were doing in the 70s, as far as make like good contact with, real looking martial arts and really good stunts, until like The Matrix in 99 with Yang Wu Ping and all that, and Keanu doing his Tai Chi and Kung Fu and all that. But America was known for doing like, good car chases and big explosions and stuff like this. But the on-screen fights hadn't changed a hell of a lot from the days of the Cowboys and John Wayne doing the big haymakers and all this. This film kicked ass.
Oh, it did kick arse, and it still kicks arse. Like, one thing that struck me when I was rewatching it recently is actually just how good everything looked. And I know obviously the fact that it was shot on location plays a big part in that. But even the sets, say like the actual fighting arena itself, the stage, the ramp, the fighters compete on, it's all shot really well, and it just looks
Yes.
really important and nice, and just, really, really, really well shot. But going back to what you're saying about the actual fights and the fight choreography, the first time I saw it, I was just amazed. I actually used to get this movie a little bit mixed up with Kickboxer when I was a kid, because I saw them both around the same time. And Kickboxer is some really good fighting, obviously, in it as well. But this movie in particular, like, they do a really good job of kind of from the get-go. It's like it's a short enough little montage they do, but they show you enough of each individual fighter that you really kind of get a flavor of how different they are in their styles. Like, they just kind of do a nice little kind of montage where they're like cycling through kind of each of the fights in the early rounds. And, we see Paco, the Portuguese kickboxer, and we see the other guy who's doing like capoeira stuff. We get a little taste of everybody's, fighting style. And it does feel like you're almost getting like an introduction to like a Street Fighter or a Tekken game, or
It's like a
something like that.
smorgasbord. It's kind of funny, because like, I love martial arts movies and action movies, always have, and as well as other general action movies, like, I don't know, like cop films and Lethal Weapon and all that, and car chases and Steve McQueen. But like, I have done a little bit of martial arts over the years, and so it kind of stands out. One of the things to me, as much as I love the film, it's quite strange to see a tournament where they're all doing different styles of martial arts. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because in most classical martial arts tournaments, if you go back to like, you got like Chuck Norris in the 70s doing like point contact karate tournaments and all that, and he'd also trained in Taekwondo and Tang Sudo and all this. But usually most tournaments of this era, as in ones where they're wearing a gi, this is pre-UFC era, they'll be doing the same style. So it's quite strange to see it in the film, but it's really fun to see it. And in a way, it's a much better Street Fighter the movie than Street Fighter the movie.
Oh yeah. And it's Van Damme himself, there's a reason, I think, why this is so beloved by people who aren't even real Jean-Claude fans. It's probably because it's his perfect role in a way. It's
Yeah,
kind of like
he
the
looks
way, like,
amazing too. Probably his best physique in this film.
perfect, yeah, unbelievable, unbelievable. And he
He
just
he
kind of
looks like
nails it.
walnuts on chestnuts on walnuts. That's like the whole body.
Yeah, freakish muscles, like muscles in places that most people don't have places. Just Yeah, a freak in nature, especially in that opening montage where he's training with his late master, and we see him actually being literally stretched out both by the
Yeah,
arms and the legs while he's doing the splits. Like, that's insane. You can see the muscles in his back just bulging as they're being stretched. It's
you
he's in
can tell it's a
crazy
real
condition.
vehicle for him because like this was also a Canon film, which I forgot, but it's one of the better Canon films and shot in a stuffable budget and made back more than 10 times its money. But most Canon type films, you're probably going to see a bit of a boob or something in it. Nothing like that in this film. There's an implied sex scene that's off camera where we see nothing racy at all other than the ladies lying in a bed. But then we cut to a slow motion pan of a very naked Jean-Claude to show his buttocks in full view.
Yeah.
Just wanting to show like how good his physique is.
That's what inspired Hulk Hogan and No Holds Barred to get all oiled up and naked for his bedroom scene. But yeah, it's
it does feel very, very gratuitous, but I didn't mind because he was in such a good condition that it didn't mind actually see his physique.
Yeah, he's not all orange and lumpy like Hulk.
Yeah, no, he wasn't an orange lobster man with a spray-on tan and spray-on beard.
There's no real gunplay in this movie either.
No,
which
there is some
interesting.
tasers.
Yes, it's interesting. I know obviously you might think, well, there's not really, it's a martial arts movie, but there is lots of scenes featuring police and army guys where, you know, there's no shootouts or anything like that.
There's
there's
a bit where the guy almost takes a gun out of his belt and another guy stops him and goes, no, we need him to come back to work for some reason. This guy who's deserted his military post to go overseas for a tournament.
Another reason though why it might be, you know, a little bit more safe possibly to show the kids, you know, during the day. Maybe you could get away with showing it. There's not too much, you know, you're not seeing squibs exploding in bodies and stuff like that.
I'd show this
like,
to a 10 or 12-year-old, no issues really. There's a couple of bits of like where it's a little grizzly, like punches in the face, and it's going, for the time it's like, oh man, that seems kind of shocking. I'm like, watching the UFC, you're going to get punched in the face over and over for 30 seconds. And then they stop the fight, but it's not any grislier than an actual boxing match or anything.
Yeah, and a lot of, like, I suppose the most kind of devastating blows that you see in the movie, they're almost kind of delivered with like the way it's all shot. Like we see Van Damme doing a lot of like slow motion high kicks and stuff like that. They make it kind of beautiful in a way to the point where it's almost not violent. It actually just looks kind
the film
of
techniques
nice.
And heightening it and slow motion and the nice lighting and Whereas in real life, someone comes up and goes bang, the punch is over for like half a second, then you're like, oh, he's on the ground. I guess he got knocked out.
Yeah. I you know, real fighting is kind of boring, and it's over in a flash a lot of the time. UFC
like sport fighting can be entertaining, but like fights with actual people in the street are usually look fairly disgusting and horrible, and nothing nice happens to anybody.
And even those early UFCs where you had, like, you know, Mr. Karate Man versus Mr. Sumo. Yeah, you're like, they never, in your head, what you wanted was kind of what you get in Bloodsport, but what you actually got was just, you know, the heavier guy pummeling the small Karate Man.
The big guy's got to knock you the fuck out. And until someone like a Hoist Gracie comes along who could actually like tangle up and get guys and triangle choke them. But then people went, oh, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is really useful. And then the whole sport evolved and eventually got bought out by Dana White, and then the whole thing basically became BJJ. Is basically what it is there.
How do you feel about Frank Dux having to actually prove his pedigree and prove that he's eligible to enter the tournament by doing that thing with the brick where he breaks the bottom brick?
That's quite strange, the brick thing, because that's like really like a karate thing or karate. That's like a kind of thing you would do. It's not so much a training thing or a testing. It's more they would do it like demonstrations for the public, stuff like that. And other martial arts have done it too. They're like brick breaks or bits of wood and stuff. But you only do that with certain types. Certain types will break. If you do it with the wrong type, you'll just break your hand and it will never break. But yeah, I don't know. It's a funny kind of scene. How do you feel about it?
I just think it's funny because you'd think like to qualify for the tournament, he'd have to maybe win a fight or something that would prove that like he's eligible. Like, but I think the way they kind of frame it in the movie is that to get that, to break that brick on the bottom apparently is very impressive. You know,
I've seen someone do that in real life, but it's like not a thick brick like that. It's thin like a tile, and they had probably 10 or 20 of them, and they do a more of a knife hand chop, and then they did actually break the one on the bottom. Or they break all of them if they want to. So I have seen some of those demonstrations. They're kind of cool to watch, but it's almost like a gimmick. Or I mean, they rarely break stuff, but it's like a gimmick for the public to go, oh wow, that's interesting. Whereas you go and it's like, okay, now go over here and do 100 shadow boxes and kicks and punches and train with your partner. It's going to be much more boring if you actually go to martial arts classes than just breaking stuff.
Totally kind of, well, not totally unrelated, but a little bit unrelated to what we're talking about. There is a kind of funny botch of somebody trying to do one of those demonstrations on YouTube. He's a guy, he's on a news report because he's going to try and break like a world record for being able to karate chop coconuts in half, like the shells of coconuts.
That's pretty impressive.
Like,
coconuts are hard as hell, but they'll have to get ones
pretty
that are not
impressive.
great that are tried out of it.
Unfortunately, I think these coconuts he was given were not cooperating because he ends up maybe he gets like 2 or 3 deep, and like his hand begins like to like split open, and like, you know, he keeps going, and like these coconuts are just not breaking.
Coconuts. He should have got the Fijian coconuts. Get the
man,
ones that are more
feel
dried
so bad
out,
for him.
larger ones.
It's both funny and depressing at the same time to watch, because, you know, he's pretty sure he's going to be able to do it at the start, and then he realizes pretty quickly this ain't happening.
I would say it's actually harder to break a coconut than a brick, because bricks are pretty easy to break.
Well, the only way I'm breaking a brick is like throwing that brick from a height. I'm not breaking anything with my hands, man. I'll break my hand off a brick, no problem.
You could smash one on your head. You might knock yourself out, but you could do it.
Yeah, maybe it's one of those gimmick wrestling ones that just turn to powder as soon as I touch it.
Well, there was some. I remember reading about old time stuff in Japan and that, like different martial arts breaking stuff and all that, and ones like people breaking stuff with their forehead. But like the difference was if you come from certain parts of Japan or off the coast over in Okinawa, they're eating like traditionally going back a long time, eating lots of fish and shellfish, and their skulls and bones were actually thicker and stronger. So it's easier to actually break stuff like that if you want to do that crazy stuff. Whereas most of us, where bones would not be as strong today.
You have a favorite fighter in the tournament that's not Jean-Claude?
Oh, it's definitely the guy. I never remember the character's name. The big goofball guy wearing the Harley Davidson bandana, who just like the one bit I always remember is when he comes out for his first fight. He's obviously a bigger. I remember him being kind of fatter or stauncher, but he's actually in pretty good shape. He's just a large dude. He's not quite a wrestler-sized dude, but he's going up there. If he put some pounds on it, I reckon he could be like a show wrestler. But the other guy gets a few good hits on him here and there, and he gets virtually nothing on him. You can tell he's not a martial art. He's more of a brawler. And he comes in, he does this kind of, I don't know how well you see it, but I would say he does like an overhand hammer strike fist to the guy's kind of like eye socket and nose, and just instantly knocks him down. It's like, holy shit, that was awesome. That was like this thing that really grabbed my attention as a kid. And again, watching it today, I look forward to seeing that bit again. Just the brute strength. Someone just swinging their hand like a fucking hammer and knocking you down.
And he probably would have had, Chong Li beaten his fight too if he hadn't turned around to pose. And,
he was showboating. He had a beat that was showboating. Yeah. Because they're pretty similar.
Yeah,
he's a little bit bigger in size, but in weight, he's probably quite similar to that Bo Young, because it says he was a bodybuilder. So he would have been quite heavy in his mass and that.
He wins a fight by throwing an opponent out of the ring as well, doesn't he? It shows in one of the montages where he literally grabs the guy and just throws him.
Yeah, which is not obvious at the in the earlier fights that there even is even ring outs like you see in bloody Virtua Fighter and Soul Calibur, but in some of the old point competition martial arts ones, they would have like out of bounds areas, so you could that was a valid tactic in certain tournaments to actually just get someone out of the. But it would be like usually be like a point, and you might have to get 3 points or 5 points or whatever.
Cool as well the way the fighters are part of the audience. Because when the big dude is like he wins his match, and then he actually calls out Chong Li, who's just sitting in the audience, yeah. And later on, when Chong Li's like, "You're next," to Jean-Claude, to Frank, they're just calling them out directly. That'd be pretty cool, going to attend the Kumite and you're actually sitting next to some of the fighters, like, you know, scoping and scouting their opponents for the next round.
So how do you feel about the big Chinese fella who's Bola Young? Like, Jean-Claude is in great shape, and this dude, he looks pretty menacing and awesome. Like, he's big, he's powerful looking. He was a real martial artist, more so than Jean-Claude, and also a bodybuilder, which is where he's got that extra mass. Like, he's memorably in Bruce Lee's not Into the Dragon, Into the Dragon, and the opening scenes where they're doing the kind of display fights. He has a little kind of like play fight with Bruce Lee, and I think Sammo Hung's in there too. And he's in loads of martial arts films. And I was looking up on IMDb. He's still in films in the last 10 years. He's in like in the 70s now.
Probably still like super jacked for an old man, no doubt.
He's a lot. I'm looking at a picture of him here, and he's a lot thinner, but he just looks like a healthy, strong-looking man. He's not all bodybuilder big. He just looks more like Donnie Yen and bloody like Ip Man or something now.
Well, he's a total menace in this movie. He's terrifying at times in it, and
I'm sure like too. In the video game King of Fighters, there's a character called Goro, and he's modeled directly on the outfit and look of this guy in this film. He looks exactly like him.
Yeah, you see, I think what's scary about Bolo, or Chong Li in this movie, as he's called, it's because he does look so kind of muscular and big, as well as being fast, because like he's able to match strength with the big American, but he's also able to match speed with Van Damme. He can kind of do everything.
Yeah.
And he's also just a freak as well, because his character, they tell you at the start that he's killed a person in the finals of the previous year's tournament. And in this tournament, it's like he nearly goes for kills at the end of all his fights. Like he breaks a guy's neck early on. There's another guy where he kind of like, he does that weird, it's like it shows him clenching his fist and doing this weird twist before he like hits the guy. And
I feel like he was an influence. I mean, obviously Jean-Claude, but the Mortal Kombat first video game, but also the Mortal Kombat movie is like very heavily influenced by Bloodsport and by the Bola Young. He'd almost be like, in Mortal Kombat, it would be Shang Tsung doing that kind of like, you're like, I'm going to get my opponent and really mercilessly mess up their neck or do something horrible. The crowd's going, oh no.
Yeah, because whatever he does to that guy, like once again, the way it's shot, they don't shoot it in such a way where it's like showing overt violence. It kind of cuts, but we see the referee going over and he's like, oh, you know, he's dead, you know, like this guy's going nowhere. But yeah, he's just taking out everybody.
Like there's a cool scene early in the film too, before they get to the tournament, where Jean-Claude and the other big dude that wears the Harley bandana, they're playing an arcade game, and when it cuts to it, it's Karate Champ from like the mid-'80s, one of the earliest fighting games that also got home. They did kind of home knockoff conversions called International Karate on the Commodore 64 and other stuff. It was actually a really good game. And it was cool seeing the proper game in the movie. Although I read up on little goofs and silly stuff on IMDb and like, but this is such an ordinary thing for films, for video game stuff. When the actual footage you see is the real game, but it's in one player mode, not in two player mode. So it's kind of funny.
Forrest Whitaker is great as one of those.
He's so thin
guys going after Frank. He is so thin. Yeah, he looks like he's having a great time going through the slapstick routine as well. He's very unserious. Like he's usually dead serious in everything you see him in, but in this movie he's just having a laugh. It feels like a lot of the time. It just he just looks like he's having a great time, slipping over and falling over and feeding dogs his leftover food and all the daft stuff he's getting into. I love the way as well, like everybody and their dog knows about this super secret fight to the death tournament that's going on. Like literally everybody on the street, you know, the Kumite.
Yeah, the Kumite. And just to distinguish, like Kumite is a real thing, but like the tournament in this film was a made up nonsense thing.
What is the real Kumite? Explain that to me.
Well, it's not a tournament. I'm trying to think what's the classical version versus what's the Hollywood and the video game version, because it's been used for so many different things in media. But like it's pretty much, as far as I know, and I could be wrong, I think it comes from Kyokushin karate, and it's like a test of like techniques and things you've learned, usually against various opponents in that. And like there's memorably in, I can't remember if it's Virtua Fighter or Shenmue, there's like 100-man kumite where he has to fight like 100 guys in a row. But it's like testing all the skills, but it's not meant to be like a real fight. It's meant to be like a classical martial arts, using all your skills and things, and there's probably going to be people and judges watching you or whatever. So more like competition type, not competition's the wrong word. What more I'm thinking of like classical martial arts, like grading and stuff. Yeah. Like, you know, it's more like a testing of the skills rather than like we're going to murder you and break your neck sort of thing.
Like a gathering of the very best and performing feats and things to prove that you can, you know, do a particular thing.
Well, it's well, here I've looked up a basic definition just online, because I read so many different bloody things over the years, like martial arts magazines and stuff, and so many things that have one meaning in Japan will have a different meaning in the West, because it's become like a generic word or thing. Like, you know, it used to be all martial arts back in the 50s or 60s. No matter what someone was doing on a military base or whatever, they would call everything karate, because that was the only thing I ever heard of. And then people heard of judo, and everyone would refer to judo, and then, you know, until other stuff became more well known. But kumite says refers to sparring and fighting against the opponent, but also along with kata and kihon. So involves practicing techniques and principles in a simulated combat environment. So there you go, simulated. That's kind of the thing I was getting at. It's not meant to be like deadly serious, you know. Serious in like you've got to train properly and do technique properly, but no one's trying to kill you for real or anything. It's not like Commando and Rambo.
Or do you think that the real Frank Dukes was invited just to do like a demonstration, and he just fucking blew it totally out of proportion in his mind?
Yeah, he was invited to all this big splits and ball punching techniques like Jean-Claude. Very, very tread life that. That's the best move, man. Do that in Johnny Cage and Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, 100 men line up and you have to punch each one in the balls.
Yeah, I think your fist will be a mess by then. So we'll touch on this Frank Dukes guy here, because so to start with, there was a real life man named Frank Dukes. He does exist. Well, I don't know if he's still alive now, or not, but he was an actual man, and he did start some dodgy martial arts schools in the 80s or whatever. As a lot of different people did in America, started martial arts schools, some of whom might have traveled to Japan and trained with other people, some of whom did not, and just started martial arts schools like a business, like you want to start a law office without having a law practice, without having a law degree. People could start martial arts without having any kind of real qualification as such. But I'm literally going to read some sections off Wikipedia, because his crazy life and career is just so over the top that like I can't remember all the stuff. I've read things over the years and like old Black Belt magazine and read internet videos and whatever. But if you think Steven Seagal has got some tall stories, he hasn't got nothing on this guy. This guy's got some amazing stories. So I'll just read some of the highlights here. So it says here, early life. This is just on Wikipedia if anyone wants to look it up for themselves, because it's the best summary. There's lots of old websites that have bits and pieces, but this kind of compiles all the different stories together. So it says he was born in 1956 in Canada. He states he was introduced and trained in ninjutsu by Senzo Tiger Tanaka, and that's the name we get in Bloodsport of the guy's master is Tanaka. It's a pretty common sort of Japanese sort of name, whom he described as world famous teacher and the descendant of 40 generations of warriors. That sounds like something straight out of a fucking Kurosawa film to start with. Duke says that Tanaka brought him to Masuda, Japan, when he was 16 to train him as a ninja, which is fairly unlikely, because like most pre-1970s people you know, yeah, well, during the 70s, there were various Americans that traveled to Japan and did classical martial arts and whatever. But post World War II and before the 70s, there's a lot of time where people wouldn't want to teach Westerners or anyone that basically wasn't Japanese anything to do with any kind of fucking martial arts and stuff. So if you're claiming before a certain time, that's kind of a bullshit radar detector there. So his career, Duke served in the United States Marine Corps Reserve from 1975 to 1981. And despite most public military records saying that never happened, it's like that he was like basically enrolled in the military but didn't, you know, serve overseas or anything or go to Vietnam. He claimed he was in covert missions in Southeast Asia during this time. So think of like, I don't know, Air America with like Robert Downey and Mel Gibson, this sort of stuff, and like behind enemy lines and this sort of things. He also claimed he was awarded the Medal of Honor, despite the only photos showing a Medal of Honor from a completely different line of military service that years later he said was actually a Halloween costume. So that's a bit strange. He wrote several articles in the 1980 issues of Black Belt. Now, Black Belt magazine, I'm not sure it's still going, but it was going right from the 70s right up to at least the year 2000, 2010. I used to buy issues of here and there. It was a respected magazine. They used to have like, there would be like columns from guys that were traditional, you know, like a kung fu teacher. Actually, William Lung, one of the Sifus of Bruce Lee, he used to do articles for in this magazine quite regularly and had stuff. He was a lifetime practitioner of kung fu. They'd also have stuff like by a guy named Jim Wagner, who was like a ex-cop and kind of like tactical specialist. Like he did like bodyguarding, and he did like tactical scenario breakdowns, not just theory, but like from actual life and experience and whatnot, of like situations of people getting shot and stabbed in public and rock concerts and all kinds of real life things. And it would break down different stuff, and he would be a consultant and he had like a training school for doing training for scenario based training based in, you know, basically how to not die in terrible situations that had nothing to do with martial arts and everything to do with like modern weapons and shit. So that Black Belt was a really good magazine. So when they published this stuff, they didn't know this guy was bullshitting them. He was described as being decorated for his blade fighting techniques and actual combat in Southeast Asia. There's a lot of people that will claim bullshit about knife techniques and knife fighting. Most of them are completely full of shit, unless they've like genuinely got something to do with real military background or some kind of Filipino knife fighting. They're usually completely full of shit because it's not something that was commonly taught in most martial arts things. Most of it was complete horseshit. He also did articles for Inside Kung Fu magazine, which was another long-running magazine. Now, as we get into this tournament thing, the basis of Bloodsport, he was interviewed in 1980, stating that in 1975 he participated in a martial arts competition in the Bahamas called the Kumite, which in the Bloodsport movie it's changed to China, of course. Describing the event as a 60-round single elimination tournament held in secret every 5 years. 60 rounds seems kind of nuts. Like, I mean, even elite athletes, who's going 60 rounds of anything? According to Dukes, he was the first person to be given permission to speak publicly about the event. So who gave him the secret permission? There's no record of who this person was given permission. Not only did he get the first Westerner to be able to speak about it, he was the first person to win the tournament, achieving several world records in a secret tournament. So that's not in the Guinness book. Where the fuck are these records? Including the most consecutive knockouts, 56, which are quite a number of both classical martial arts teachers, trainers, and actual real world like boxers and MMA fighters have all said, no, this is bullshit. Like, no one's got fucking 56 knockouts. And the fastest knockout punch, the 88 film Bloodsport, is based on this alleged Kumite victory.
Yeah, he thought, you know, I could tell them I knocked out all 60 guys, but that might not be believable. So I'm just going to say I knocked out 56 of them, and that just sounds more plausible.
Even some of that stuff there, that to me, let's say there was any basis to this and it's not completely made up, because it's clearly exaggerated. That would have to be point fighting, not full-on boxing, UFC, wrestling fight. There would have to be like point fighting where you like Karate Kid, tournaments. They go, hit, we stop, we do a hit, we stop, do another hit, do a point, or like watching Olympic judo and shit like that. there's no way you're doing 60 fucking rounds of anything. Even like the best boxer in the world's not going like 60 bloody rounds. Like you'd be dropping dead of exhaustion and dehydration before you even get halfway through that.
That's why they only do it every 5 years. It takes you another 5 years.
Because everybody dies. That's the other secret. They'll die of dehydration and exhaustion.
But this is all stuff, you know, it wasn't so easy to disprove back in the day.
Yeah.
Before we all had like instant access.
It was a different time, different world before the internet thing. And I mean, even early into the 90s, like bloody message boards and shit like that. And not the kind of information they're available to now where you can easily look up just a Wikipedia summary of all the, like some of the stuff I've seen tiny little fragments in magazines or things online over the years. But this is the first time I've seen it all summarized in one convenient place. It goes on to say, so he started some martial arts schools teaching some kind of ninjutsu in the 80s, called the Jcvd ninjutsu, which is a fairly meaningless name, which is apparently based on the Koga ninja root principles of Koryu, adaptability and consistent change. Unlike Jukes, like Koga ninja, you can look up that there as its own subsection. That's got an actual family or lineage like you can look into, and like it's like a real thing. So it's like me going, oh, I came from the fucking Rocky Rambo school of boxing or something. If he was a real guy, and just kind of say this is something famous people have heard of, so I'm going to attach my name to it, or you know, absolute
bullshitter.
Exaggerator. One more section here. This kind of finishes up the claims to fame and all that. So in addition to doing his martial arts schools and stuff, he released a book in 1996, The Secret Man, an American Warrior's Uncensored Story. I would love to read this. It's probably, I imagine it's long out of print. In the book, Duke states the CIA director, William J. Casey, arranged to meet him in a restroom, nothing dubious about that, and recruited him to work on covert missions, including destroying a fuel depot in Nicaragua and a chemical weapons plant in Iraq. So basically, he's Snake from Metal Gear Solid. This is a colonel meeting him in the bathroom. He's like, I know what you did back in the 70s, fucking Air America and shit. You were there with Robert Downey doing all those missions. Now I want you to go and do these other one-off missions in remote locations, but you can never tell anybody about it. But it says all the stuff in there, both anybody involved in any kind of sporting authority or martial arts stuff have all said, no, this doesn't exist, this didn't happen. There's public record stuff saying he was never anything to do with the CIA, but he's like, well, it was a secret. And all the things that are like clearly fabricated, even there's some stuff saying, I don't know, if anyone's done a real article, like an actual journalist probably wouldn't give a shit and even looking it up. But if they did, there's public record stuff to say he didn't serve overseas anywhere in the military ever. He was enrolled in the military, but he didn't go to Vietnam and he didn't go to other places. And, you know, there's a lot of stuff like that back from the 70s, people that did go to Vietnam and they've forgotten about and we've lost records of them, or people that never went there that falsely got credited, not through their own fault, but someone fucked up in a record office. Oh, this guy went to Vietnam. Actually, no, he stayed at home or got sick or something, you know. So there's all kinds of like crazy stuff from records back then. But like this guy's got some tall tales. And the cool thing is it translates into good movie stuff from movie material. But as I was saying before we started talking, it's like he's a show wrestler into kayfabe, but he's not good at doing it real life, but he's good at doing it for the movies. Because he worked with like 3 other films with like Van Damme, as well as suing him for one of the films he was working on. They were writing 2 other films together and he sued him over one of them. It's like, why?
Yeah, so I was actually going to ask, did you know how he profited much from the actual Bloodsport movie? I'm assuming it definitely got his name out there at the very least.
Well, the quest came out of this because Van Damme and like the quest was like a Van Damme and Duke's project, and the other one I forget the name of. Like the quest I quite like. That's like quite good. And I forget the name of the other one, but they worked on several other films, and because of this one. But then the strange thing is, like, that's your kind of producer writing partner. It's like, okay, you've got a guy who's got some ideas for a story who you could loosely call a producer, if not a writer, and you've got a star in Van Damme. They're like, oh, we work well together. We're going to do another film over here. We've got ideas for more projects. We'll start 2 other projects, and then I'll sue you for one of the projects I'm working on with my partner before it exists. So he seems a bit of a strange fellow.
Yeah, he may not have the best decision-making skills, does our Frank. He's what, like back in the day, you probably would have just called him, oh, he's just a character. Whereas these days, you're like, he might be a little bit of a, he's a bit of a carny. He's a bit of a scammer, maybe, you know.
Yeah. Which is fine, just to, like, be that. But like when you're trying to, when it's been like 2 decades after the fact that it's all bullshit, don't keep trying to say it's not. Just be like, oh yeah, that was like, invent a new story, invent a new lie for this time.
Have you ever watched any of the sequels? I've never seen any of the sequels to this.
I knew there was Kickboxer sequels. I didn't know there was like multiple Bloodsport sequels, like 3 more or something.
Does Van Damme appear in any of them?
No, none of them. Just like most of Van Damme's. Does Van Damme ever get a sequel that's where he gets to be in his own movie again? Like Time Cop 2, he got booted out.
He's not in the second Universal Soldier, but he did come back for one, didn't he?
I think the 3rd one, he's a cameo or something.
Yeah, I think him and Dolph made like a return. It might have even been called Universal Soldier: The Return or something stupid like that.
Yeah, that's right. I've seen that second one. I haven't seen that third one. I've seen the cover in the video store years ago.
Yeah, I'd be almost curious maybe to at least watch Bloodsport 2 just to see if there's like any of the magic there at all, just to
I'm gonna have a look. Well, and there's another film which is kind of a spin-off but kind of not, that came out the following year called, hang on, I'll bring up the thing again for Blood Fight. So this was the year after, and this has got Bola Young again, the big bodybuilder Chinese martial arts guy who's in loads of films back then. He's been in dozens and dozens of films. But that came out the following year. And I don't know whether it was created directly because of Bloodsport, but clearly that logo and the name, as far as the American audience, has been created in that title to capitalize on the popularity of Bloodsport. And I watched the first opening 5. It's on YouTube. You can watch it for free. You can just type in Blood Fight and the whole movie's on there. And the opening of it is very much like Kickboxer. Bloodsport, where it just looks very similar, but obviously a lesser budget. And we just watched the scene where a sumo wrestler was fighting some other smaller guy, and he falls on him with his ass, and his groin falls on his face, and it was like, it seems more comedic as well.
Even apart from the actual logo and font, on the actual Bloodsport poster, they even have Van Damme doing like the karate kick over the logo as well. So they've even ripped off that.
That one goes back to, I don't know 100%, but like I'm pretty confident that the iconography of that Bloodsport where he's doing the big kick over the thing, that's from that 70s Bruce Lee movie, because that was put up on massive billboards and stuff in the 70s where he's doing that big jumping sidekick.
Is Bolo like a hero in Blood Fight as opposed to?
I don't know. I've only seen the first 5 minutes, so I won't see the rest till tonight or tomorrow.
He might be. I'm just guessing since he's the actual star of this one. Maybe he's the actual.
Yeah, because he's fairly well known for people that are martial arts movie fans. He's fairly well known. He's like there's loads of actors from the 70s and 80s from China and such that have done heaps of their own sort of movies, and as well as like bit parts in American movies and that and TV shows.
He's a total heel in Bloodsport. Like, not only is he actually killing people in the fights, he's even like after every fight, he's always trying to rile the crowd up to chant his name. He's really hungry for the attention and the adulation. And like when he kills one of the dudes at the end of the fight, and then all the judges turn their backs on him. It's like, you've gone too far this time, Bolo.
So I think he's still a villain. I'm just having a quick look at other films he's in. And then it says he was usually a villain in most films. It says he got to play a good guy in Shoot Fighter, Fight to the Death in 1993. So there you go. So he got to be a good guy at some point. Yeah.
They actually called Shoot Fighter. That's a fucking great name. This is worker a shoot, brother. Don't shoot me, brother.
Yeah, when I was a kid and I first seen like the word shoot fight or something in magazine. Like, my only context was playing the Street Fighter game, and I was like, does it have anything to do with that? Like, no.
Although a physical freak of nature. Yeah, I mentioned there's like the capoeira guy, the kind of Portuguese kickboxer dude, Paco. He's pretty cool as well. Him and Van
Yeah.
Damme get into like a rib kick trade-off where they're just both taking turns kicking each other in the
Yeah.
ribs, and Paco just
There's a
can't
lot of
take
good
it
kickers in
anymore.
that movie.
Yeah, oh man, I'd say your ribs would be an absolute bits. Not Van Damme's, because he even like kind of proves himself, but he's like, yeah, I can still go. Whereas the other dude's like, you've literally smashed my fucking rib cage in.
Yeah, it's funny seeing all the contrasting styles and stuff, and like it's also memorable the guy who's like bouncing around like a flea, where he's down like real low.
Yes.
And I couldn't
Yeah.
quite pick the movements, but it looks almost like it's kind of weird looking. It looks almost like a mix of capoeira and monkey kung fu, the way he kind of bounces around.
Yeah.
Like I've seen actual
like I
people
was,
doing capoeira demonstrations, but they're doing more kind of up and side, like Eddie Gordo and Tekken 3, you know, he goes side to side and there's a lot of rhythmic dancing movements. So that rhythmic stuff. But I was watching that and I was thinking, all the guys, it's so clearly like that 70s karate stuff, because they're also stand up and there's one guy's down low and they find it difficult to hit him. But if that was like modern times in the UFC, they would just like lie on the ground and wait for him to come near him, just like grab him with their legs and submit him in 2 seconds.
Or go for a quick knee strike straight away, because he's down low and also putting his head towards you. You're just like, boom, knee strike, you know?
But it just shows the difference that everyone was used to the stand-up fighting, and they don't know what to do, how to fight this guy.
Even though like I do watch UFC from time to time and have enjoyed UFC, I will say it did kind of kill a lot of the mystique around fighting that films like this kind of put out there, you know, because you just wouldn't get that type of drama in a
film fights are like show wrestling, like an actual sport fight, or is going to be like it's going to be like wrestling rather than show wrestling. Because as soon as you clinch up and you get into a certain distance, you're not breaking that distance unless you're just got no skills at all. Because the moment you do, there's an opening and they're just going to clock you and knock you out. So you want to stay as close to them as possible, because the moment there's any distance, they can generate any power or speed and knock you out. And if you're and once you're clinched up, they're going to submit you. So, and as soon as you're inside or outside of that range, you're not going to do much of anything. A certain distance, you can't reach them. Once you're in this range, you're in striking. Once you're in close, you're in grappling range. So any real fight, as in like sport fight, the UFC is going to stay in those ranges, other than when they're dancing around trying to recuperate and get some oxygen in. But that's why, like in show wrestling, they're always dancing around, they're flipping, they're moonsaulting, they're clotheslining. But if you're wrestling, you don't want to break contact. You want to make contact with them the whole time.
You want to hook them, and you don't let go.
Exactly. But it's the same thing, whether it's like jiu-jitsu or whether it's other striking arts and that, or boxing. Like once you're in a certain distance, you want to stay in there unless you're moving away to get right away from them. But yeah, you're right. It does destroy the mystique of movie fights, because it's like actually it's a weird thing. But they've even in Street Fighter, like Street Fighter 4, Street Fighter 5, completely made up video game flashy moves. High level competition fights and that are incredibly boring. They're actually a lot like watching UFC. They get really close and they do little taps and stuff back and forth. They don't do all the big flashy moves, because there's big openings and where you can parry and do stuff and counter people. So it actually becomes quite boring. It's more interesting to watch like someone who's not very good at fighting, quite amateur, doing all kinds of moves and shit.
Yeah, when it gets down to the point where you've got like 2 experts who are like counting frame rates and stuff.
Yeah. So it's very similar. Like I've watched UFC and then I've watched like tournament stuff with people playing Street Fighter, and I'd rather watch UFC. Street Fighter gets real boring.
You think there was a lot of people back in the day who watched the Bloodsport movie, then they went on to become fans of playing the Street Fighter game.
Yeah,
found out that Jean-Claude Van Damme was going to be starring in a Street Fighter movie. Got really excited thinking it was going to be something like Bloodsport, but then they got what they got.
And then, of course, he was. They tried to get him to be in the original Mortal Kombat, as in digitize him for the actor and that, but that got turned down. But they used the the in fight where Jean-Claude's in the little bike shorts with the sash. They used that same outfit for Johnny Cage, and then he was, you know, still loosely based around him from this movie and Mortal Kombat, which was cool. And then I see just in the last 12 months that Mortal Kombat 1, there's a DLC where he's actually in that game now as a swap the outfit or whatever, and you can actually be Jean-Claude in Mortal Kombat.
That's pretty cool. They finally got the likeness in there officially.
Well, it would just be free money for him. He'd be stupid at this point to say no. I mean, he got offered to be in the first Expendables and turned that down.
We did enjoy him in number 2, though.
Yeah,
we'll have to hit.
He's had an odd career. I mean, he's sabotaged himself a lot with the bloody drugs and other nonsense, but he's had some awesome films overall.
No, look, it runs in the Van Damme family, this type of career sabotage. Old Rob is fond of the smoking the Mary Jane and messing up his career sometimes too. But I think we should at some point definitely jump deeper into the Van Damme waters. I know we've waded in a little bit so far with Street Fighter and Bloodsport, but there is...
Yeah, I have to have a think about what other film you particularly want to get into.
Time Cop. You mentioned Time Cop. I haven't watched Time
Cop. Yeah, I like
Time
Cop. Yeah, Time Cop's good fun. It's probably my next favorite. Like, well, Kickboxer, Bloodsport, Time Cop, and also like that. Well, not as good as those, but still fun as Hard Target with old Lance Henriksen. He's got the big mullet hair in that one.
I enjoy Universal Soldier as well. It's always a guilty pleasure of mine, personally.
Yeah.
So this is the skin, the Johnny Cage skin.
And that's just like the early render. Like I watched you can watch the trailer on YouTube. I won't play it in case it fucks up the video, but if you go on YouTube, you can see the like trailer for like Jean-Claude and it's called Mortal Kombat 1, but it's actually like Mortal Kombat. I think it's Mortal Kombat 12, 11 or 12 is actually what it is, but they've just called it that title because it wasn't set in the timeline or whatever. It's like a kind of reboot, whatever. But you can watch the trailer on YouTube, and the character model actually looks really cool. Like, I mean, it looks as cool as the other guest characters they did years back. They did like Alien, Predator, Jason, Freddy, and whoever the hell else. Oh, RoboCop, of course, and Terminator. So there's so many guest characters in Mortal Kombat at this point. Maybe Rob Van Dam should be in there next.
Maybe. I'll actually throw out there as well for any video game fans. If you happen to be a video game fighting fan and a Bloodsport fan, if you go onto YouTube and search for the Bloodsport Tekken 2 intro, somebody has gone and done a really good job of kind of overlapping footage from Bloodsport over the Tekken 2 intro, and they've actually matched it up so well with the music and the moments. It's really good. Like, so if you watch the Tekken 2, the actual Tekken 2 intro, and then watch the Bloodsport version afterwards, you'll be very impressed. I have to say, it definitely brought a smile to my face to see it done. But any kind of closing thoughts yourself on it before we reveal what next week's topic is?
Well, I love this film. I haven't watched it in so many years, and it's definitely an influential movie in my life. It didn't make me run out when I started doing martial arts. I didn't get to do anything like that until at least 15 years after seeing this. And it was probably more watching like Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan stuff. But it was, for me, one of the coolest like action movies I saw in the 80s as a kid, and getting to see like traditional style martial arts rather than like, you know, the old cowboy haymaker John Wayne punches and Clint Eastwood climb up a fence. It was a different style of film, and it was kind of, for me, probably my first introduction to martial arts as like a genre of cinema, even though there's obviously hundreds of bloody films over the years before and after this. But for me, it was kind of quintessential film, and it wasn't until many years later I got into a lot of other stuff. But it definitely influenced me, and it piqued my interest to be like, I want to see more stuff like this. But also, I love Jean-Claude in this film, man. He's just so good. And like, he's got different criticisms about him, different strengths, like anyone. Like certain actors like Statham or Schwarzenegger, they're basically just always themselves in the film. They're the same, just some dude. They're just a dude in the film. Whereas like, you know, old Rambo Stallone, he can actually act, and he can be in Copland and be in weird shit with like Dolly Parton singing and other strange stuff. Whereas like Jean-Claude also, he's mostly the same. Well, what would you say? He's mostly the same guy most of his films, isn't he?
Yeah,
He's not the best
I would
actor,
agree.
but I really enjoy him.
Yeah, and
But I think
it's
he
one of
can
those
act.
things.
He's not great. He's not great at acting. But also his
think
English isn't his first language. Like, you know,
exactly.
if you watch him in that Jcvd one he did, that was quite good. There he's actually acting.
He's the type of actor where, and it's a little bit like Arnold as well, where you should really kind of maybe tailor the role to suit them more
Yes.
so
Yeah.
than try and put them into a role that they're not really made for. You know, you have to kind of
Yeah.
tailor your film specifically around them, and I think they
Like the
nailed
Quest.
it
He's in the
with
French Foreign
Bloodsport.
Legion.
Exactly, yeah, it just works. The scenario works, and I think the scenario works perfectly for him in Bloodsport as well. Like it's just the exact setting that he needs to be in to excel. And they just give you enough of the comedy and a little bit of romance sprinkled in on top that it shows, oh, look, he could potentially have some range outside of just being like this
He
action
could probably
combat guy.
break walnuts between his butt cheeks if he wanted to. He probably could. I'm sure that's why they
Probably
showed
could.
that scene.
He probably could. But you know, we're kind of we're three quarters our way through our little
Yeah, we
quadrilogy
are.
of action heroes. We've got another one though next week coming up. Who've we got next week?
Dun, dun, dun.
Mr. Norris.
The good Chuck.
Chuck Norris. Good old Chuck.
Chuck Norris doesn't sleep. He waits.
Invasion USA. The USA has been
Yeah.
invaded,
Actually, it's
folks.
another canon film. I just realized.
Yeah. Okay, USA. That's a line from Bloodsport. But yeah, it's going to be good. It's a Chuck movie I like. I have it on DVD. I'm going to watch it this week. Love the poster. Love
They've
the
never made an
premise.
action figure, but they did make a plastic statue of him in that exact pose a few years back. I almost bought it, and I kind of regret not getting it. It just had a little plastic base. It was about 6-inch scale.
All you'd need. There's actually a real lack of Chuck Norris figures
Yeah.
in the
I do have
world.
a
We need
printed
more.
version of like Chuck Norris facts, like, you know, those internet jokes. I have like 2 volumes of those books, but they're like self-published, unofficial things. Actually, I have Walker Texas Ranger. I have about 4 seasons of that on DVD. There you go. It's probably like some other Chuck stuff.
At the very least, we'll have to run through at least a handful of Chuck facts when we look at Invasion USA next week. I am genuinely though looking forward to watching it because, like Bloodsport, I haven't watched it in ages. Like when we spoke about Commando, and Rambo, those are 2 movies that are usually in my general, you know, yearly rotation of stuff I watch. Whereas Bloodsport and now Invasion USA, they're going to be getting watched for the first time in a long time. So I'm really looking forward to that. And looking forward to popping our cherry on Chuck here because once we get Invasion USA done in the future, we got things like Delta Force, you know, and Lone Wolf McQuaid. There's so much good Chuck stuff out there that we can dip into later on.
Cool stuff. But yeah, we've got Invasion USA coming up next week. The following week, we might do a sidebar, like a one-off topic or something that's kind of undecided at this point after that one. But going into the following month, just a little hint at what topic might be coming up into the following month. Woo! There's old Ric Flair. Woo! What else might we doing? Could be talking about some other classic pay-per-views and such.
I'm intrigued. And you listeners should be
intrigued. Haven't done any for a while.
We spoke so much today about, you know, shoot fighting. We're going to have to just talk about some work fighting to balance it out a bit later on. Yeah, looking forward to Chuck next week with Invasion USA.
Yep, the good Chuck giveth and the good Chuck taketh away.
Let us know, folks, what you think of Bloodsport and Jean-Claude.
Was it bloody enough for you, or not blood? Too much blood, not enough blood? Tell us in the comments.
Too much blood, not enough sport. Too much sport, not enough blood.
Not enough lies.
Let us know.
Deception.
Yeah. You prefer Jean-Claude Van Damme or Rob Van Damme? Let us know who you think is more talented.
Okay.
RED, baby.
We'll catch you guys
All right,
next week.
folks. Take care, guys.